We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Milton School Committee meeting of August 22nd. The first item is to approve our agenda for this evening. And I do know of one change to the agenda, which is under the chair's report that we will postpone discussing and approving our school committee handbook to our next meeting on September 4th. We're still working to incorporate a couple of final revisions to that based on the final review from our legal counsel. So that's one thing that we'll remove from our agenda this evening. Are there any other changes or deletions that anyone knows about? Okay. All right. So in that case, we can just move right along to public comment. It doesn't look like we have anyone here for public comment, but this is the portion of our meeting that we set aside to hear from members of our community who wish to share comments with us. If you are here to participate in public comment, can you please raise your hand at this time? Doesn't look like we have anybody here to participate in public comment. So that's fine. There's a lot to get to in our superintendent's report. So Dr. Burrows, I'll just hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So our first order of business here before I start talking about all of the activity over the summer and getting ready for school next week and all that excitement are handbooks, which are the next order of business. This is an annual process where handbooks come in front of the school committee for approval. And those were shared previously in the folder. Lizzie, how would you like to kind of go through this portion?
I guess I would just start by thanking everybody for taking the time to review these because it's always a lot to read through. Even though, also some things, a lot of it stays the same from one year to the next. But I think we can just open it up for any questions that anybody did have that or things that we might need to discuss or address prior to taking a vote. The way our motion is written out, and I think I recall as we've done in the past, we are able to pass these as one vote rather than need to do them as individual votes unless there is some concern that a member has. But, this is always our opportunity to give these final approval before they go out to our community, obviously with school about to start. One thing I'll just point out is I like in reading through them, I just noticed a couple typos, which I'm planning to just send by email. And I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will. But I'm going to obviously vote to approve them as is and share back what I noticed just in my reading because I know that it's a lot also putting them together. So if anyone else noticed things of that nature that are just typo type stuff, I think we can feel free to share that by email to Charlene, right?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I will just add that the significant change with all of the handbooks is Title IX, which there was a federal change in policy. We're talking about that later tonight as well. And so that is the substantive change in the handbooks. The other changes from last year to this year are extremely minor and kind of like little word changes here and there, but nothing significant. So these, if you look side by side last year to this year, Title IX really is the change.
Does anybody have any questions or points of discussion on any of the handbooks? Um, if not, I will make a motion to approve the following handbooks for 2024-2025. We have Milton High School, Pierce Middle School, the elementary handbook, the staff handbook, and the athletic handbook. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. So are any last discussion? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Member Loring,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Member Serio,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And great. So that was the handbooks. I will hand it back over to you for back to school updates.
Great. So let me get my screens figured out here. This was a really exciting summer. A lot of that has to do with kind of where we are in place and time in terms of planning and all of the work that we did last year to the first part of the year, which was that listening and learning and analysis of our systems, sharing that information, and then starting to look at, so what does this mean in terms of what we're doing next year and in years to come. So it was a real kind of touchstone moment, I think, and this summer has been extremely, I would say, targeted in terms of having so much information to organize and to be sure that as we're doing that, all of the leaders and everyone else who has been a part of sharing what's important, sharing where we need to go, are part of helping to construct and build the all of the work that we're going to be doing over the next 5 years as part of the implementation plan. Um, Going into the summer, one of in order to respond to what is, I think, um, probably more focused work than we've had here in a long time because of all that work we did last year. We had 5 retreat days in August. Um, Historically, there has been one retreat day at the end of August, so this was a pretty big change, and we invited 2 of those days were with principals, and then 3 of the days were with all of our leaders. That includes directors, coordinators, central office principals, um, assistant principals. So that's about 30 of our leaders. And I would say, and the other 2 folks here that were part of it can give me a thumbs up if you thought it was very productive and powerful. Yes, Katie, thumbs up. Okay. Um, we were on a pretty tight timeline because we had to come out of these 5 days with a completed implementation plan, a completed year 1 action plan, which guides the work over this current year. And we had to understand to the degree we needed to how we're going to be leading this work with our community as we go forward. So the 5-year implementation plan is pretty much like as of this evening is getting finished. We're going to be sharing that with our staff on Monday at our welcome back event and kind of digging into that. And we'll also be sharing that year 1 action plan, which soon after we share that with staff on Monday and share it with the community, and of course you all will get it prior to Monday as I get it tomorrow and can get it out to you all to review. We're going to start putting those teams together to work on the different strategic priorities that we've identified. As I've talked about previously, we want to be sure that we are doing the work well, that we're not trying to do too much, that as we're building these systems, we're putting equal importance on building understanding from our staff, students, and community. That part is really key. Um, so I think one of the big things that I'll be sharing with staff on Monday is the intentionality that we need to have collectively as a district to do this work and to have it last. So I think we're in a really, really good place. I'm excited to share these documents and also start doing the work. And I think people are going to be really excited to see these building blocks start going into place and really see us starting to move. So um, I would say that's one of the big things as we enter into this year. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement as we share all this information. We've been part of supporting that work has been welcoming the two new folks you see on the screen here, Katie and Regina, who have done an awesome job this summer in helping us to get ready. As you all know, we split our previous position of assistant superintendent of curriculum and HR into a point 0.6 director of teaching and learning and a point 0.4 director of HR. And that split and I think will be really powerful over the course of the year as we work on building out an HR system, which we really need. And we have a person who is attached to that work and can help to guide that work. As you know, our hope for after this year is to move to have these be two separate positions, which is, I think, the industry standard in pretty much any district of our size anywhere. So that has been really positive. We also have, part of our systems work, which is that priority area 3 work, is working to think about and design in ways that the central office is going to support staff, community, etc. And so we've spent a lot of time as a team of 6, that central office team, to talk through kind of where the gaps are. Where do we need to lean in more? Where do we need to be the glue that brings people together? An example of that, as we've been getting ready for the start of school, often there are kind of hundreds of emails going out from different groups who are responsible for different things. So Regina might be responsible for one thing, I'm responsible for 2 other things, and we're all just kind of focused on what our thing is. And so we were talking last week and this week about how to bring all that together and share just one communication with our principals about these are the things that you need to be thinking about, and just to help to bring a more kind of comprehensive view of what's ahead. We welcomed around 30 new teachers. Regina, what was that? What was the final number? 28? You're muted. It's okay. I think it's not if it's 28. Okay, it's 28. Um, which apparently is a number that's one of our lowest numbers. So I think we have, in terms of retention, we haven't looked at the data yet, but apparently that number is lower than it's been in quite some time. But a great group of people. Uh, as I mentioned, we're kind of going through and looking at all of our systems and looking at, is the way that we're doing this aligned with our values? Is it aligned with what we think is important for a new teacher to understand as they come into MPS? I think historically we've kind of thought of what are the nuts and bolts of what are the things they need to know. We approached it this year kind of more holistically, and we spent the first morning with them, and I spent a good part of that kind of working with all of the new teachers and talking about who we are and talking about who they are and helping people to understand what makes MPS special and what we believe in is really, really important to kind of get new teachers off on the right foot in that way, and to really get them excited about what we're doing. And I think we did that. It was great. They had two full days, working with various leaders from the district, and it felt really good. I think, as I look back from last year to this year, I can see a lot of the change that we've made, and it feels really good. We still have a lot of things left to continue to kind of like move through, but I see a really big shift in terms of like some of these things that we're doing where we're bringing more thought and intention to them. Another thing we've been working on this summer is budget. So thinking through the budget process. Katie has brought lots of great experience and intuition and process, which has been really helpful. So we're definitely excited about working with the finance committee and uh, with the community at large and looking at FY26 and also really keeping a keen eye on FY25, and understanding that we ended the year with not quite making it in terms of our where we had hoped our expenses would be. So we're definitely as we've started the year, Katie and I have been working together to make sure that our communication with all of our departments, with our principals, et cetera, is really clear so that we can be kind of really on track as we go through FY25. You may have noticed some new logos floating around. Those have been finalized, which is really exciting. Mark and Anna did. I know Mark's saying he didn't do anything. He helped. He helped a bit, right, Anna? Anna did the lion's share of it, but it's really exciting to get to the end of that. We have an MPS logo now. It's going. I think it's on the website. If you look at the top of the MPS website, I think that icon is now there. School committee members may be getting a T-shirt here at some point. So that's exciting. And yeah, we're our welcome back event is Monday. It's kind of soft start at 8 and in the auditorium at 8:30. All of you are very warmly invited to come, and it's going to be in the auditorium for probably an hour and a half, and then we're going to go outside like we did last year, and we'll have some food, and it's a community building event, which will, I think, be really nice. Students are arriving on Wednesday, and we'll be off. So that's my update.
Thanks so much. It's exciting. Really exciting. And it's just, I mean, that's huge to have 5 retreat days going from 1. I mean, that demonstrates so much commitment on behalf of your entire team. But it also, I think demonstrates the trust that people have developed in you, to be willing to really invest that. It's exciting. And thank you, Anna, for the logo. It looks really cool. And Mark. So anyone have questions for Peter about any of the updates? So I know when we talk about our next meeting, that'll be a chance to, that's September 4th. So that's when you'll once again provide a back to school update that will include sort of how things have gone, and bring us up to speed with all of those activities. And also at that time, be able to talk through the implementation plan, right? That will have been shared with the community by then, but we can kind of have some discussion about it at that point. Great. Okay. Any
One of the
questions?
other things I just wanted to mention too is one of the things that has been really important to our staff is professional learning. And it's been pretty, I would say, uh, hard to track because I think over the years we've had a lot of great professional development, but it has not necessarily been tied together. Uh, so one of the things over those 5 days that the leaders did was create a really strong professional learning calendar for the year. We didn't go all the way to the end of the year because the work groups that are working on the implementation plan will need time with staff to build some of that, but we've, I think, organized a really strong professional development calendar, which is also exciting. And I think, Lizzie, you were talking about the commitment that people feel. It's really important that any time that we bring people together, time is so valuable. And it's really important that when we bring people together, it's meaningful. So that is one of the things that in my role that I feel very strongly is that if we're together doing work, we should be doing good work. And we shouldn't kind of do like a 30% job at preparing and going through the motions. We should be either meeting and doing 110% or not meeting at all. And that's kind of what I think that's what the leadership team felt as well. And it was exciting to see that plan take shape, and Regina helped to lead some of that. And anyway, I just wanted to mention that was another kind of exciting thing from the summer.
Thanks. That is something that I feel might be helpful. You'll figure out like the appropriate ways to share it, but to help the community like learn more about that process as well and what that entails, because of course, from the community standpoint, it's a similar benefit to having that transparency and understanding the value of it. It helps everybody not just accept, but like actually appreciate why it is when we have a day off or an early dismissal, what's the purpose of that, and that there's the value that comes from that time for staff. So I feel like overall that will help us just move towards that better understanding altogether of why, what that's for, what we get out of it. Amanda, go ahead.
Yeah, I think as a follow-up, and maybe you're saying the same thing, Lizzie, is it would be, I think, does the community or are the the topics, if you will, shared, like what the units or what the PD is around? Does that make sense? So like if you were having, is there something that they choose? I think as a parent, you don't always know what that entails. Is it a specific class, if you will, or topic, or do teachers choose it? And then if so, what is it? And how does that go through the year? I think that would be helpful for people to know, just really from an interest standpoint as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think oftentimes professional learning is pretty opaque in districts. Community generally doesn't know or doesn't even can't, there's not a lot of sharing of that unless people on the inside, so to speak, to know kind of what's happening. This year, I think there definitely are themes and topics, and I think it will be clear to the community, and I think this is important, as we're mentioning, that the work that we're doing in professional learning is tied directly to the work we're doing on the implementation plan to build these systems and to impact student outcomes. So we're not doing professional development. We're not kind of, as we have done sometimes in the past, we're not bringing in like a consultant who specializes in UDL to come in and talk about UDL, but to not have a system within which to put it. So this year is kind of a building year in some ways where some of that professional development time will be bringing staff together to help to have them be constructing what we're doing, because that's our time that we can be, I mean, other than the educators that join some of these work groups, uh, as we did last March, where we brought the priority report in front of our staff and got tons of incredible feedback, which altered the direction of some of the strategic priorities in the implementation plan. In the same way, part of our intention for this year is that as these work groups are working, and the work group on MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, is gathering data, is looking at best practice, is building out component pieces, is starting to build that infrastructure. We need them to come forward to all staff, and for staff to see the development and be part of talking about, yeah, that makes sense to me, or that doesn't. Have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? Because as much as we can, we want all folks to own this work.
That helps. I think it explains it a bit as well. So it's not just necessarily topical, for lack of a better way of talking about it, like a topic. It's also about systems in a sense.
Yeah, and it's about thinking about our entire staff as agents of building the system,
Mhm.
as opposed to like a drop down where like we create it like off somewhere offsite, and then we bring it and say, here it is, please follow it. In my experience, when people have input and ownership, it's better, it lasts longer, it's the right culture, it does all the right things.
Mhm.
But it'll be interesting to talk more about what would be good to share in terms of like a, maybe not we have a calendar that's very specific. It's almost too edu-wonky for the public. I think they'd look at it and be like, what is going on here? So thinking about like a high level, it would be great to share a high level PD plan with people to show, like you said, like here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, uh, and also talking about ways to get parents and community involved in that too. Virginia, you on that?
Now it should be working.
It's working.
Okay, that's great. I had to sign out and sign back in. So a typical example that I'm thinking about that the curriculum coordinators and the principals and the leadership team really worked on was understanding students through a data lens and looking at that across different levels and every grade. So we have through lines, vertical and horizontal, that we're using to support our understanding of the learning in the schools. So I think that that's the kind of information that the community it would be helpful for them to know how we're looking, analyzing data, and thinking about our students' learning to support the priority plan's first priority of academic excellence.
Yes. Selena, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Regina and Peter, for that explanation. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that what you've been doing over the past year and some is really changing and shifting culture, in that has to spill out to shifting culture beyond the school walls, right? Beyond the district, and really thinking about how do we continue to help the public, the community understand sort of this shift in direction and approach. which I think it's a very important shift. And it's one that is hard to speak to it, right, in tangible ways. When you talk about processes, when you talk about systems, it can get really hard for folks to wrap their heads around it. And we're not going to see sort of these tangible results immediately, but they will come, and I trust that they will. So I think a big task for us in terms of the school committee, and also for us to support you as much as possible, is in taking the implementation plan to the streets, if you will, right? How do we make sure that we're all talking about it in the same way and that we all understand it, so that it becomes a way of us understanding the good work that's happening, because it's the way you're going to be able to continue to move it right in the direction, so people don't start questioning, why is there another PD? Why is there this? It's part of the good work that's happening. So I know you know that, but I just say that I think for the sake of us as a school committee, to think about how do we continue to support you and the team throughout this year to socialize the implementation plan more and sort of make it part of the lexicon of all of us as we're talking about it and sharing the good work that's happening.
Thanks, Lena. That's really well put, and important for us to kind of carry forward into the next layer of it. When we, at our next meeting, we're going to dig really into our goals for FY25. And I think we talked a little bit about it, but we should really make sure that we are aligned on that piece. That's a great point. Anyone else? Okay, well, I know those of us who can't be there on Monday will be there with you in spirit and supporting the work you're doing, on the three of you, and the work of all the educators starting a new year. Everything that you're doing, that they're doing, is, I know it's so appreciated by our entire community. So it's exciting to be starting a new year with this really positive momentum and energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will be sharing your pictures again. So
great.
last year I got them just off the internet, just kind of random pictures I found that were like from running for a town meeting seat or things like that. So if you have a special picture that you want displayed, you can send it to me.
Okay.
We need to take that group picture at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So let's really,
we need to prioritize that.
Do that. Because there's always, one of us is always making an excuse for why now is not the day, but someday soon. All right. So great. Is there anything else under your report?
That's it.
Okay. So for the chair's report, that's me. I have just a couple things to share. And the first thing is just provide an update really to the community, because we were all there at our retreat at the end of July. And I'll just share sort of high level takeaways from that retreat. And then, whatever any of you would like to add, please feel free to do that. So really just to bring the community into the work that we do in that setting. The first thing that we did was we kind of reflected back on our core text, which is called The Governance Core. It's by Davis Campbell and Michael Fullen. And this is a text that shares scholarship and best practices in management, essentially, for how school boards can function well. And so we first read this book a year ago, last summer, as part of our entry process with having welcomed Peter to be our superintendent. And we took the opportunity to both support our newest member, Amanda, sort of joining and learning about the governance core, but it was an important chance for all of us to kind of look back over it and really think about connections that we could make between aspects of the book and the experiences that we have each had serving on school committee over the past year. So that was sort of a fruitful way for us to reflect on our progress and things that we have noticed have gone well, and also areas that we want to continue focusing on. So that's sort of the first thing that we did. And anybody in the community who is interested, I think we all recommend the book. We've all found it to be really helpful. And anybody who's kind of curious for that lens into our professional development as a school committee, you can check out the governance core. We also then spent time reflecting on our progress towards our FY24 goals that we set a year ago. And that was a really gratifying process, because what we were able to find in looking back at those goals was that we made a lot of progress, and we actually accomplished the majority of our goals. So I'll just kind of quickly go through those again, just sort of for the record, but these are the goals that we had set for FY24 that we were able to accomplish together as a school committee over the past year in collaboration with Peter and your leadership team. So we built a collaborative relationship with the superintendent. That was an important goal for us a year ago. We created an onboarding process for new school committee members, and we were able to test that out on Amanda. And we'll continue to improve it, but we're happy that we were able to create that process after several years of kind of lacking such a process. So we refined our existing subcommittees and advisory committees in terms of gaining coherence, mostly with how we're dividing up our work and for what purposes. We supported the superintendent through his entry plan to develop a coherent plan that would equitably help students achieve at their highest academic level. So that was a priority that we had set. The community has been able to access the superintendent's entry plan. And we also were supporting the ability to improve student social emotional well-being through that same process. We also joined the superintendent in his community listening tour as part of the entry plan process. That was a goal we set for ourselves. And finally, we partnered with members of the select board, the warrant committee, and the Milton community to secure funding in the Milton Public Schools budget to do the work of the entry plan and strategic plan. And, while anyone who followed our process with the budget last year knows that we did identify needs that were not ultimately funded, we were able to get our highest priority needs supported through that budget. And so we were successful in that respect. And as you mentioned, Peter, we'll just continue working on that for the coming year. There were a few goals that we found to be sort of nearly complete, where we had made a lot of progress. We may not have accomplished them 100%. One thing we did was we did meet our goal of holding bi-monthly or quarterly governance-focused discussion and workshop meetings. We did do that. We had set the goal of including checking in on our goals to reflect on our progress. And I think we agreed that we could have done a little bit more on that piece of kind of checking our progress on goals throughout the year. So that's something that we can keep thinking about. We developed a protocols and procedure manual, or a handbook, for the school committee. That included updating some policies in section B, which is board governance and operations. And we are very close to completing that process. We will continue and hopefully complete it at our next meeting. So that's really exciting, because it was a really ambitious goal, and we're very close to accomplishing it. And then finally, the goal of securing financial and physical space resources identified by the superintendent that are needed to implement the pillars of the strategic plan. We have, I think, some progress towards that goal, but also clear areas where we still face challenges, and we'll need to keep working on that. The last goal we had was the only one where we kind of agreed that we had not made much progress towards achieving it. And that was a goal that we had set to work to develop a communication strategy as a school committee with clear, coherent messaging and a process for proactive community engagement. And Selena, that really is connected to what you were just saying. And I think we all see the need to continue focusing on that piece, and we'll be able to dig into that further next meeting when we start to discuss our goals, which we will approve at the following meeting in mid-September. So that was really fruitful. Looking at our FY24 goals, the last thing we did at the retreat was to begin developing those draft goals for FY25, which, as I just said, is a topic at our upcoming meetings. Does anyone have anything you would add to that sort of report out of our summer retreat? It's just nice to continue getting to know one another. Of course, that shouldn't go without saying, to enjoy, doing work over meals and building our own kind of relationships as we do this work together. So definitely appreciate that aspect as well. The last item under the chair report for tonight is just the 2024-25 school committee meeting calendar. So we all have that in our folder, and it is still, and continues to, it stays in draft mode, because as things come up, we sometimes have to make adjustments. But this is our internal calendar where we kind of know what's coming up and are able to add in things as needed. You will see in the calendar, one thing I wanted to just thank you, Selena and Peter, for that opportunity to, we kind of had a chance to look big picture across the year. I don't actually recall getting to have that kind of conversation previously. I think that's a sign of what you were talking about, Peter, with like taking that larger view. Because once the calendar gets started, it's easy to just stay like focused on making it through one week to the next, rather than making sure we take a step back and kind of accomplish the work we want to do month to month, quarter to quarter, and then therefore across the year. So I did add in our governance retreats proposed dates for October, January, and March. We do still need to finalize those from among the options that we have. And I'll be trying to do that like within the next few days. But those are kind of placeholders at this point. Other than that, what questions or sort of comments do people have about where we are at this stage with our calendar? I think we want to, as I think, this is the last thing I'll say is like, Selena and I, as chair and vice chair, do meet with Peter to go over the agenda before any given meeting. And we have a process laid out in our handbook that's close to being approved, where, for how members can add agenda items to the agenda for meetings. But as we look at it as a holistic document at this point, does anyone have anything you want to raise for us to consider about it? Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, again, I think most of the things look like the things we covered last year, which is great, and I appreciate having the calendar and holding on those things. Were we going to discuss like as a group about the discussion we had around potential new reports or data conversations in terms of like specific things that we might want to discuss, such as staffing information, right? Or obviously we'll have like MCAS data reports, things like that, and the other site council presentations and a lot of the instructional presentations of last year. But like, is there, yeah, just a broader conversation, or would you prefer that we like put a list together of things that we are potentially interested in over the course of the year to send to see about where those would fit and what the interest is of other members in those things?
So we can do that. But you're reminding me that I didn't mention something I meant to mention, which is one new thing that we kind of talked about. And so then Peter, maybe you can like chime in about this, but you'll see in the calendar something new, which is these quarterly implementation plan reports. And so at next meeting, we will be getting like an overview of the implementation plan. And then it will be at our meeting in early October, our first meeting in October, that would be like at this time, we were thinking the first sort of presentation with data, sort of setting a baseline almost for what kinds of things we're going to be tracking through these quarterly reports. And Peter, how I recall we just thought about it, but then please clarify if you want, is that through that discussion, like through the presentation of that first of these reports, we would be able to respond in a discussion, like not just to what is actually being shared with us, but like the like are things missing? Like are there things not in this report that we want to respond to, so that therefore we're able to kind of have that as a conversation in providing feedback to the actual report, instead of making a theoretical like plan and discussion that is sort of abstract and not an example of how this information is actually shared. Peter and Selena, is that accurate based on how you understand it, what we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of those quarterly reports and how we share data and how it's meaningful, the construct is such that we can talk about the work we're doing, we can look at the data, and we can, in a similar way that I know we talked about the residency policy and bringing that information forward, to create a baseline and be able to look at kind of like, how are we doing? Is the work that we're doing impacting our data in the ways that we want it to? I do think it would be helpful, probably in terms of Mark's question, to think about if there are things that you all are interested in looking at or talking about, having a heads up prior to putting together. For example, we talked about HR in October. So if there were questions that different school committee members had relative to that whole body of data, it may be helpful for us to talk about prior to that presentation, so that then we can both share, here's what we're doing in terms of building out these systems. Here's our kind of baseline data of where we are. And we can also, if there are things that we're not looking at or we wouldn't have covered, would be great to hear from all of you prior to presenting, just so that we can kind of have as many of the kind of perspectives in our heads as possible. So I guess that would be, I think, one way that we could, as opposed to, I know what we talked about was, if as a kind of a larger leadership team here, if we're only looking at disparate data points, and then there's nothing for us to do about it other than say that's a problem, let's do something about it, then we're not like moving it as much as if we're looking at data relative to like having it be actionable, I guess, is kind of what I'm kind of talking about. So I think that's one way, and I think we also talked about, if any school committee member has like questions or wants to look at something or is hearing about something, some of those can be individual conversations with me. They can also be things that we put on the agenda, and I can talk about. I can also talk about things in the superintendent report too. So I think there are a lot of ways to tackle it. I don't think there's like a universal necessarily to cover everything.
So where in terms of like where we leave that, I mean, Mark, does that answer for now, or do you want to, I mean, just knowing that we can't, one thing we cannot do is actually like deliberate in this document by adding, we cannot each add things into the document. We can't like add comments. We can't, because that then becomes a conversation that we're having, like even if it's asynchronously online in a document. So and for open meeting law, for anybody who watches this that might not know what I'm talking about. So I would say if you have, you mentioned a list, like I feel like it cannot hurt at this point to send that. I think who you're sending it to is, if what you're talking about is data that you are sort of hoping to put on the agenda of meetings, then you're sending that to me, and Selena and Peter.
That sounds good.
Okay. And then as we go, I'd like, maybe we're doing both. Maybe we all know that we can always like make those types of inquiries directly to you, Peter, but that we can put things on the agenda as well, request that. And then I am also interested in entering that first, Q1 implementation plan quarterly report, like with that lens as well of like, does the way this report is coming to us, like, is this working for us to receive this information, knowing that, we have the goal of promoting of our own like learning to be effective in our roles. And so we can do both of those things. Anything else? Okay, so it's a work in progress, and we'll just keep, living by this and working on making sure we all have our calendar invites that help us know what we're doing in addition to this document. That's very helpful. So, yes, Selena, go ahead.
Just a logistics question. Will we be getting our calendar invites soon for all these meetings? I haven't seen them yet, so I just want to make sure they do come through. It was very helpful last year. It was a new practice and it helped.
That is the plan. I will check in, but they will go out momentarily. How's that?
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, hand it over to you, Mark, for Finance Subcommittee.
Sounds good. Finance Subcommittee met twice since our last school committee meeting, and I think everybody in this call joined it. So since it was cross-posted, but for the public's sake, we met once about the SY24 closeout, and some of the questions and details just around the budget closeout and us coming in about $400,000 over budget, needing to go to the select board to address that through some ARPA funding. And a lot of those conversations also played out during the select board meeting, but we had like in the finance meeting where we talked through that a little bit and talked through, answered some questions of members. We then had another meeting, was that earlier this week already? Earlier this week, where we talked through, Katie presented the budget plan calendar for the year and talked through those details, and I just got feedback from members on the overall calendar, and then from there kind of are doing some due diligence to reach out to the select board's finance committee, the warrant committee, some other groups that will be significantly involved in the budgeting process over the course of the year. So I've already started making those outreaches and hope to have a further report on that at the next finance committee meeting when we meet again. So I think that is a recap of what our meetings have been. We also have approval of some vendor warrants, but for that I'll pause in case any of you have anything else to add to my recollection of our meetings or any questions. Hearing none, we have 2 vendor warrants to approve. We are not approving vendor warrant number 7. I shared out with y'all vendor warrant number 4 electronically. I don't think, I'm looking back at my records, I've not sent out anything on vendor warrant number 5. So I emailed Gail and we'll get that over to y'all. And then Bill and tomorrow's, we'll have vendor warrant 7 out to you as soon as I review and sign it. But I will make a motion to approve vendor warrant 4 in the amount of $208,900.87 payable on 8/8/24. And I will also vendor warrant number 5 in the amount of $448,271.68 payable on 8/15/24.
I second.
I will do the roll call vote. Lizzie,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Selena,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
I'm a yes. That's Finance Committee report.
Thank you. So next is policy.
Okay, so for policy, we had a meeting last Wednesday on August 14th. We had reviewed 4 Title IX policies, which are in the folders. There's a redlined version and a clean version. Basically, what we did was adopt the MASC versions and then made some edits in terms of conciseness in terms of the language through our legal team. So those are in your folders. And what I need to do is we need to expedite. So I need to make a motion to approve the 4 policies. So we can discuss if you have any questions and then.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Motion.
Oh,
Wait.
I can make a motion if
Maybe-
there's. Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Does anyone have any questions?
And just the reason for the expediting was just the need to get our policies aligned with the changes in the law before the school year begins.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if there are no questions, then I will make a motion to use the expedited approval process to approve the following policies for policy AC, which is the non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. Policy ACA, which is the non-discrimination on the basis of sex. Policy ACA-R, which is non-discrimination on the basis of sex under Title IX, including sex-based harassment. And then policy ACAB, which is sexual and sex-based harassment and retaliation. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Lizzie,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Selena,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. And that just brings approval of minutes. Did anybody have any changes to the minutes that are in the folder for July 31st? That's for our Milton School Committee retreat. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the Milton School Committee retreat of July 31st, 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Selena,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. So that just brings us to next meeting agenda items, which we can see on our calendar. We have actually a bunch of things. We're going to be doing back to school updates. We will have our first discussion of our draft goals for this coming school year. We will hopefully approve the school committee handbook that we have developed, begin the discussion of the superintendent evaluation process in terms of what to expect for this year with timeline, and the implementation plan presentation will be under your report, Peter, along with, the back to school updates.
Yeah.
Okay. And then subcommittee and advisory committee reports, I guess those can just be added to whatever meetings we have. I mean, let's see, we will not have a policy report. We won't be meeting again. I don't think finance is meeting again, but we might be approving some vendor warrants, right? So we will have finance. School building committee is meeting, right? So we might have a school building committee report. Okay. And yes, Anna.
I think facilities is meeting on Monday, hopefully. So that'll be part of our next one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So facilities and school building. Okay. All right. I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Anna,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Selena,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
I'm a yes too, and we'll be back together on September 4th in person, but with our normal hybrid setup. And just best wishes for the start of school to everybody in Milton Public Schools, to all of us with our own kids. And yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
It'll be a great
Night.
year.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.